Hey there, movie lovers. Imagine this. You're sitting back, popcorn in hand, ready to dive into a film that's not just a movie. It's a cultural phenomenon, a wild ride that redefined cinema in the 90s and still packs a punch today. I'm talking about Pulp Fiction from 1994, directed by the one and only Quentin Tarantino. If you haven't seen it yet, or even if you have, and it's been a while, let me tell you why this is the movie you absolutely need to watch right now. It's got everything: sharp dialogue, unforgettable characters, a soundtrack that'll stick in your head, and a style that's so unique it changed the game for filmmakers everywhere. Trust me, by the end of this, you'll be hitting play on this classic. And hey, I'm gonna walk you through every little detail about this film, from how it was made to the stars who brought it to life, all without giving away a single spoiler because I want you to experience the magic fresh. So, grab a drink, get comfy, and let's jump in. First off, let's set the scene on why Pulp Fiction stands out in a sea of movies. Released on October 14, 1994 in the United States, this film hit theaters and immediately became a sensation. It wasn't just another crime flick. It was a bold, innovative take on storytelling that blended humor, violence, philosophy, and pop culture in ways no one had seen before. Directed by Quentin Tarantino, who was only 31 at the time, it showcased his signature style: nonlinear narratives, witty banter, and references to everything from old movies to fast food. Why should you watch it? Because it's the kind of film that makes you think, laugh, boss, and gasp all at once. It's endlessly quotable, with lines that have seeped into everyday language, and it features performances that revived careers and launched others into stardom. Plus, in a world where movies can feel formulaic, Pulp Fiction reminds us that cinema can be daring, fun, and profoundly entertaining. If you're a fan of films like Reservoir Dogs or Kill Bill, this is where Tarantino truly hit his stride. And if you're new to his work, this is the perfect entry point. Now, let's talk about the man behind the camera: Quentin Tarantino. Born on March 27, 1963 in Knoxville, Tennessee, Tarantino didn't go the traditional film school route. Instead, he honed his craft working at a video rental store called Video Archives in Manhattan Beach, California, where he soaked up thousands of movies from all genres, everything from Hong Kong action flicks to French New Wave classics. That eclectic taste shines through in Pulp Fiction. This was his second feature film after Reservoir Dogs in 1992, which put him on the map as a fresh voice in independent cinema. For Pulp Fiction, Tarantino not only directed, but also wrote the screenplay, collaborating with Roger Avary on the story. The script won them an Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay, beating out strong contenders like Bullets Over Broadway and Four Weddings and a Funeral. Tarantino's vision was to create a film inspired by the pulp magazines of the 1930s and 40s. Those cheap, sensational stories full of crime, adventure, and larger-than-life characters. He wanted to capture that gritty, exaggerated essence in a modern setting. And boy, did he deliver. Watching Pulp Fiction feels like flipping through one of those old magazines, but with a Tarantino twist that's all his own. Speaking of the script, it's a masterpiece in itself. Tarantino and Avary crafted a story that's structured in a non-chronological way, jumping around in time to keep you on your toes. But again, no spoilers. I'll just say it's cleverly woven together, making multiple viewings rewarding as you piece together the connections. The dialogue is razor-sharp, filled with monologues about everyday topics that somehow feel profound. Tarantino drew inspiration from real-life conversations he'd overheard or imagined, infusing them with humor and depth. Then the screenplay was originally conceived as three separate stories: Vincent Vega and Marcellus Wallace's wife, the Gold Watch, and the Bonnie situation, which were then intertwined. Avary contributed the idea for the Gold Watch segment, earning a story credit. The writing process took place in Amsterdam, where Tarantino lived for a bit, adding to the film's international flavor. Why does this matter for you? Because the script is why Pulp Fiction feels so alive. It's not just action. It's characters talking their way through life in ways that are hilarious, tense, and thought-provoking. If you're someone who loves films where the words are as important as the visuals, this is your jam. Let's dive into the production side, because knowing how this film came together makes it even more impressive. Pulp Fiction was produced by Miramax Films, with Lawrence Bender as the main producer. Bender had worked with Tarantino on Reservoir Dogs and believed in his vision enough to fight for this project. The budget was a modest $8 million to $8.5 million, which is tiny by Hollywood standards even back then. Compare that to big blockbusters like True Lies from the same year, which cost over $100 million. But Tarantino made every dollar count. About $5 million of that budget went to the cast salaries, which was a smart investment given the star power. Filming took place over 51 days from September 20th, 1993 to November 30th, 1993, primarily in Los Angeles, California. Locations included real spots like the Hawthorne Grill, which stood in for the diner scenes, a pawn shop in Culver City, and various apartments and warehouses around the city. The production designed by David Wasco and Sandy Reynolds Wasco captured a seedy, retro vibe with 50s and 60s influences, from the diners to the cars. Cinematographer Andrei Sakua, who also shot Reservoir Dogs, used a mix of 35mm film and practical lighting to give it that gritty noir-ish look. Editor Sally Menke, Tarantino's go-to collaborator, pieced it all together seamlessly, earning an Oscar nomination for her work. One of the coolest things about the production is how Tarantino incorporated his love for music. The soundtrack is iconic, featuring no original score. Instead, it's a compilation of surf rock, soul, and rock and roll tracks from artists like Dick Dale, Kool and the Gang, Al Green, and Dusty Springfield. And songs like Meeser Lou for the opening credits and You Never Can Tell during a famous dance sequence, no spoilers, were chosen to enhance the mood without overpowering the scenes. The soundtrack album, released by MCA Records, went platinum and introduced a new generation to these classic tunes. Tarantino handpicked every song, drawing from his vast knowledge of music history. This attention to audio detail is why the film feels so immersive. It's not just what you see, but what you hear that pulls you in. If you're into vinyl or playlists, Pulp Fiction's music will have you curating your own retro mix after watching. Now, onto the cast. Oh man, this ensemble is legendary. Leading the pack is John Travolta as Vincent Vega, a hitman who's cool under pressure but has his quirks. Travolta was coming off a string of flops in the early 90s, and this role revived his career big time, earning him an Oscar nomination for Best Actor. He lost some weight and grew out his hair for the part, channeling a mix of toughness and vulnerability. Then there's Samuel L. Jackson as Jules Winfield, Vincent's partner, delivering lines with that intense charisma only he can pull off. Jackson was relatively unknown at the time, but his performance here launched him into superstardom, also snagging a Best Supporting Actor nomination. Uma Thurman plays Mia Wallace, the mysterious wife of a crime boss, and her chemistry with Travolta is electric. Thurman, fresh from films like Even Cowgirls Get the Blues, brought a fierce, enigmatic energy that earned her a Best Supporting Actress nod. Bruce Willis stars as Butch Coolidge, a boxer with his own agenda. He's taking a pay cut to be in the film because he believed in Tarantino's script. Willis was already a huge action star from Die Hard, but this role showed his range. The supporting cast is just as stacked. Harvey Keitel reprises a Reservoir Dogs vibe as Winston Wolfe, the cleaner who fixes problems efficiently. Tim Roth and Amanda Plummer play Pumpkin and Honey Bunny, a couple of small-time robbers with big attitudes. Ving Rhames is Marcellus Wallace, the intimidating crime lord whose presence looms large. Christopher Walken makes a memorable cameo as Captain Coons, delivering a monologue that's pure gold. Eric Stoltz as Lance, the drug dealer, Rosanna Arquette as his wife Jody, and Maria de Medeiros as Fabienne, Butch's girlfriend, all add layers to the world. Even Quentin Tarantino himself appears as Jimmy, a coffee-loving everyman. Phil Lamar plays Marvin, and Frank Whaley is Brett, roles that, though smaller, are crucial. Julia Sweeney has a bit part as Raquel, and there's even a young Angela Jones as Esmeralda Villalobos. The casting was spot on. Tarantino auditioned hundreds, including turning down bigger names for some roles to get the perfect fit. For instance, Matt Dillon was considered for Butch but passed, leading to Willis. Why does this cast make the movie a must-watch? Because every actor brings their A-game, creating characters that feel real, flawed, and fascinating. It's like watching a masterclass in performance. Beyond the stars, let's geek out on the technical aspects. The film's runtime is 154 minutes, or about 2 hours and 34 minutes, which flies by thanks to the pacing. It was shot in an aspect ratio of 2.39 to 1, giving it that wide cinematic feel. When the costume design by Betsy Hyman mixed 90s streetwear with retro touches. Think Vincent's black suit, Mia's white shirt and black pants, or Butch's leather jacket. Makeup and hair were key too. Thurman's bob wig became iconic, and the blood effects were practical, using a mix of corn syrup and food coloring for realism without CGI overload. Sound design by Stephen Hunter. Flick and his team amplified every punch, gunshot, and footstep, earning an Oscar nomination. The film was rated R for strong graphic violence, drug use, language, and some sexuality, which fits its pulp roots, but also sparked debates about on-screen violence. Pulp Fiction premiered at the Cannes Film Festival on May 21, 1994, where it won the Palme d'Or, the highest prize, beating out films like Three Colors, Red. Tarantino accepted the award with a now famous middle finger to the booers in the crowd, classic Quentin. It then screened at other festivals like Toronto and New York, building buzz. Upon release, it grossed $107.9 million in the US and $213.9 million worldwide, making it one of the top indie successes ever. Adjusted for inflation, that's over $400 million today. Critics raved about it. Roger Ebert gave it 4 stars, calling it so well written in a scruffy fanzine way that you want to rub noses in it. It scored a 92% on Rotten Tomatoes and 95% on Metacritic. The film received 7 Academy Award nominations: Best Picture, Best Director for Tarantino, Best Actor for Travolta, Best Supporting Actor for Jackson, Best Supporting Actress for Thurman, Best Original Screenplay, which it won, and Best Film Editing. But why should you watch it beyond the accolades? Because Pulp Fiction influenced everything that came after. It popularized nonlinear storytelling in mainstream films, inspired countless homages in TV shows like The Simpsons and Community, and even affected fashion and music trends. Think about how many movies borrow its dialogue style or eclectic soundtracks. Films like Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels or Snatch owe a debt to it. It also boosted the independent film movement, proving that low-budget flicks could compete with studio giants. Trivia time. The film's title comes from those Pulp Fiction magazines, and the briefcase prop, central to one storyline, contains whatever the viewer imagines. Diamonds? Gold? Tarantino left it ambiguous on purpose. The dance scene was choreographed by Travolta himself, drawing from his Saturday Night Fever days. Jackson almost didn't get the role. He auditioned with a cheeseburger in hand to stay in character. The adrenaline shot scene used a real medical consultant for accuracy, though it's dramatized. The Bible quote recited by Jules is a mix of real verses and Tarantino's inventions. The film references other movies constantly: Goddard, Hitchcock, even Madonna's Like a Virgin. There's a theory that all Tarantino films exist in the same universe, with connections like the Red Apple cigarettes or Big Kahuna Burger appearing here. On the marketing side, the poster featuring Uma Thurman smoking on a bed with a pulp novel became iconic, designed by James Verdesoto. The trailer teased the style without revealing much, building mystery. Home video releases on VHS and later DVD included extras like deleted scenes, one with more Mia and Vincent dialogue, and behind-the-scenes footage. The 10th anniversary edition in 2004 added more features, and it's now available on Blu-ray and 4K UHD, looking sharper than ever. Culturally, Pulp Fiction has been parodied everywhere, from Mad TV sketches to video games like Grand Theft Auto. It's preserved in the Library of Congress's National Film Registry since 2013 for being culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. Academics have written books on it, analyzing themes of redemption, fate, and American consumerism without spoiling the plot. If you're wondering about the crew, shoutouts to associate producers Bob and Harvey Weinstein before their controversies, executive producer Danny DeVito, yes, that Danny DeVito, and co-producers like Michael Schamberg and Stacey Scher. The special effects were handled by KNBEFX Group, known for horror, but here they focused on realistic gore. Stunt coordinator Kenny Lesko ensured the action sequences were safe yet thrilling. The film's international appeal led to dubbed versions in French, German, Spanish, and more, with some cultural adaptations, like changing Quarter Pounder to Royale with cheese for metric countries, which is based on real McDonald's naming. Why watch Pulp Fiction in 2026? Because it's timeless. In an era of reboots and CGI spectacles, this film reminds us of the power of great writing and acting. It's quotable, say what again, and rewatchable, with new details popping up each time. It explores big ideas like morality and chance through everyday scenarios, making philosophy accessible. For aspiring filmmakers, it's a blueprint for creativity on a budget. For casual viewers, it's just plain fun, a roller coaster that leaves you buzzing. I'm still your narrator, diving even deeper into why Pulp Fiction from 1994 is the absolute must-watch masterpiece that every film fan needs in their life. Last time, we covered the basics. Quentin Tarantino's genius direction, the killer cast, the modest budget, the iconic soundtrack, and how this film exploded at Cannes and the box office. But there's so much more to unpack. Tiny details, wild behind-the-scenes stories, hidden gems, and cultural ripples that make rewatching it feel like discovering a new movie every time. No spoilers here, just pure excitement to get you hyped to hit play. Let's keep rolling through every fascinating layer of this film so you can feel like you've lived it before you even watch it. Stick with me. This is going to be a fun, extended ride. Let's start with some production magic that shows just how scrappy and brilliant this movie really was. The entire thing was shot in just 51 days, from September 20th to November 30th, 1993. Tight, intense, and all in the greater Los Angeles area. Tarantino and his team turned everyday spots into cinematic gold. The famous diner where things kick off and wrap up? That was the real Hawthorne Grill at 13,763 Hawthorne Boulevard in Hawthorne, right near LAX. Sadly, it's long gone now, demolished and replaced by an AutoZone, but back then, it had that perfect retro greasy spoon vibe with checkered floors and booths that screamed classic Americana. And the exterior of Jackrabbit Slim's, that wild 1950s-themed restaurant, shot at 1435 Flower Street in Glendale, right near the old Disney Imagineering campus. Though the insane interior was a massive set built in a warehouse because no real place could match Tarantino's vision. Other spots pop up all over the map. Lance's house, where Vincent makes that frantic late-night run, was at 3519 Laclady Avenue in Atwater Village, a quiet residential street that suddenly becomes chaotic on screen. The apartment where Jules and Vincent handle business, 5800 Harold Way in Hollywood, though that building didn't survive the 1994 Northridge earthquake. Zed's Pawn Shop, 20,933 Roscoe Boulevard in Canoga Park, a real spot that added gritty authenticity. Marcellus and Mia's luxurious home exterior shots were on Summit Ridge Drive in Beverly Hills. He's giving that high roller contrast to the street-level crime world. The River Glen Motel for one character's low-key hideout, 2,934 Riverside Drive, torn down now, but it captured that seedy motel feel perfectly. Even the boxing venue exterior was the historic Raymond Theater at 129 North Raymond Avenue in Pasadena, with its facade remodeled since. Tarantino scattered the shoot across LA neighborhoods, from South Bay to the Valley, Hollywood to Glendale, creating a mosaic of the city that feels lived in and real. The budget was a lean $8 million to $8.5 million, peanuts compared to 1994 blockbusters. About $5 million went straight to the cast salaries, which was a gamble that paid off huge because it locked in stars who believed in the script. Worldwide rights sold for $11 million before release. Mostly thanks to Bruce Willis's international draw, he'd had some US flops but still pulled crowds overseas, so the movie was profitable on paper before anyone bought a ticket. It ended up grossing $213.9 million worldwide, with $107.9 million domestic. That's insane return, over 25 times the budget, proving indie films could dominate when they're this bold. Casting stories are legendary and show Tarantino's persistence. John Travolta took a massive pay cut, around $100,000 to $140,000 total, because he loved the role and wanted back in the game after a rough patch. Samuel L. Jackson nailed his audition by chomping on a real hamburger, which inspired the iconic burger-eating moment. Pure method acting gold. Uma Thurman turned down Mia Wallace at first, but Tarantino read the whole script to her over the phone until she said yes. And Bruce Willis was convinced by his Reservoir Dogs co-star Harvey Keitel to take Butch. He took a pay cut too, betting on the script. Tim Roth and Amanda Plummer were a package deal from their earlier work. Ving Rhames blew everyone away in auditions. Even smaller roles shine. Christopher Walken's monologue as Captain Coons was delivered in one take, and it's unforgettable. Tarantino himself plays Jimmy, and fun fact, fellow director Robert Rodriguez stepped in to direct some of Tarantino's scenes so he could focus on acting and camera work. The soundtrack? No traditional score, just a killer compilation that Tarantino curated like a DJ. It opens with Dick Dale's surf rock masterpiece Monsieur Lou, setting that electric tone right away. Other gems, Cool and the Gang's Jungle Boogie, Al Green's Let's Stay Together, Dusty Springfield's Son of a Preacher Man, Chuck Berry's You Never Can Tell for that twist contest energy. Thurman wasn't thrilled with it at first, but Tarantino insisted it was perfect. Urge Overkill's cover of Girl, You'll Be a Woman Soon, and so many more. The album went platinum, revived old tracks for a new generation, and proved music can be a character itself. No original music needed when the choices are this spot on. Trivia time, because this film is packed with Easter eggs and cool facts. The mysterious glowing contents of the briefcase? Tarantino called it a MacGuffin, pure plot device. So, whatever you imagine is right. Red Apple cigarettes appear throughout, a fictional brand Tarantino loves. They pop up in his other movies too. And the Ezekiel 25:17 Bible quote Jules recites? Mostly Tarantino's invention, loosely inspired by a line from the Japanese film Bodyguard Kiba, starring Sonny Chiba, one of his heroes. Vincent's car, a 1964 Chevelle Malibu convertible? It was Tarantino's personal ride, and it got stolen during production, recovered years later in 2013 after thieves stripped it. Uma Thurman went barefoot in many scenes, a deliberate choice to emphasize vulnerability. The long hallway tracking shot when Jules and Vincent head to an apartment? One continuous take. Classic Tarantino flair. Influences everywhere. Pulp magazines from the 30s and 40s for the title and vibe. Hong Kong action, French New Wave, blaxploitation, even Three Stooges shorts. The nonlinear structure rewards multiple viewings. You catch connections you missed? How about like how bathroom breaks tie into big turning points for characters, a recurring motif in Tarantino's work. The adrenaline shot technique? Filmed by pulling the needle out and running the film backward. Simple, effective, practical effect. No CGI overload here, just clever filmmaking on a budget. Culturally, this movie changed everything. It revived John Travolta's career, turned Samuel L. Jackson into a household name, earned Uma Thurman her first big Oscar nod, and showed Bruce Willis could do dramatic depth beyond action. It won the Palme d'Or at Cannes in '94, beating heavy hitters, and Tarantino flipped off the booers when accepting classic him. 7 Oscar noms, including Best Picture, Director, Actor for Travolta, Supporting Actor for Jackson, Supporting Actress for Thurman, Editing, and it took home Best Original Screenplay, BAFTAs, on Independent Spirits, National Society of Critics, you name it. In 2013, it joined the National Film Registry for being culturally significant. It's on endless best of lists, AFI's 100 Movies, 100 Thrills, Top Gangster Films. Home video extras are treasure troves. Deleted scenes, more banter between characters, behind-the-scenes montages, production design features, Siskel and Ebert reviews, still galleries with posters, location scouting pics, props like the briefcase replicas. The 30th anniversary editions have slipcovers, lobby cards, stickers. Perfect collector stuff. It's streamed everywhere, looks stunning in 4K. Why does all this matter for you right now? Because Pulp Fiction isn't just entertaining, it's alive. The dialogue crackles with real-life rhythm. The characters feel flawed and human. The style is fearless. In 2026, maybe when so many films play it safe, this one reminds us cinema can be wild, funny, violent, philosophical, and deeply cool all at once. It's quotable forever. Royale with cheese, anyone? And endlessly rewatchable. New details emerge every time. A background reference, a prop, a line that hits different. We've already peeled back so many layers, but there's always more hiding in the shadows of this movie, waiting to surprise you. Let's keep going with fresh angles that make the experience even richer, all without circling back to anything we've already covered. This is the kind of detail that turns a casual viewing into something obsessive in the best way. One thing that hits harder every time you think about it is how Tarantino uses objects as silent storytellers. The film is loaded with everyday items that carry massive emotional or symbolic weight without ever being explained outright. A simple gold watch becomes the anchor for an entire arc of loyalty, sacrifice, and family legacy. A battered old briefcase glows with mystery that invites your imagination to fill in the blanks. Even something as mundane as a cup of coffee or a pack of cigarettes gets elevated into a ritual that reveals character. These aren't props thrown in for decoration. They're extensions of the people holding them, quiet witnesses to choices and regrets. The way the camera lingers on hands unwrapping food, lighting a smoke, or clutching something precious creates intimacy you don't get in faster-paced films. It's almost tactile. You can practically feel the texture of the leather jacket, the warmth of the diner booth, or the weight of a decision in someone's grip. That attention to the physical world grounds the wild dialogue and sudden turns, making everything feel strangely real, even when the situations are larger than life. Another fascinating piece is the way the movie plays with language itself. Tarantino doesn't just write dialogue, he composes it like poetry disguised as street talk. Sentences twist and loop, repeating phrases for rhythm, building tension through repetition, or flipping from casual to deadly serious in a single breath. The profanity isn't random, it's musical, punctuating ideas the way a drummer hits a cymbal. Foreign words slip in naturally. French terms, biblical passages, brand names from other countries, creating this global, almost borderless feel to the criminal underworld. And the nicknames, the casual insults, match the way people correct each other's grammar mid-thread. It all adds texture that makes the conversations feel lived in, like eavesdropping on real people who've known each other too long. This verbal craftsmanship is why so many lines stick in your head for years. They're not just funny or cool, they're rhythmically perfect, almost impossible to misquote once you've heard them delivered. Visually, the color palette deserves its own shout-out. The film leans hard into warm, saturated tones, deep reds, mustard yellows, rich browns, electric blues that evoke old pulp paperbacks and faded diner signs. Yet, it never feels dated because the lighting is so precise. Harsh fluorescence in one scene, soft golden lamps in another, neon bleeding through windows at night. The wardrobe reinforces this too, black suits that look sharp but lived in. Floral shirts that scream mid-century cool, a white shirt stained with the day's chaos. Every visual choice builds atmosphere without shouting about it. The camera movements are confident, but never showy. Long tracking shots that follow characters down hallways like they're stalking prey. Dutch angles that tilt the world just enough to unsettle you. Close-ups that catch the smallest flicker of doubt or amusement on a face. It's filmmaking that trusts the audience to notice the details instead of forcing them down your throat. Thematically, the movie keeps circling questions of control and surrender without ever spelling them out. Characters obsess over plans, timelines, what-ifs, and escape routes. Yet the story keeps reminding us that life doesn't follow scripts. Chance encounters, random decisions, and tiny oversights. These are the things that actually shape outcomes. There's a quiet fatalism running underneath, but it's balanced by moments where people choose grace, loyalty, or simple decency when they could easily choose the opposite. That push and pull between destiny and agency gives the film philosophical depth that sneaks up on you. You laugh at the banter, you tense during the violence, and somewhere in between you start wondering about your own choices, the accidents that brought you here, the moments you could have walked away but didn't. It's never heavy-handed, but the questions linger long after the credits roll. Sound design is another unsung hero. Gunshots crack with brutal finality, car engines rumble with menace, footsteps echo in empty spaces, doors slam with punctuation. The absence of a traditional orchestral score forces you to lean into the diegetic noise, the clink of silverware, the hiss of a coffee pot, the low hum of a jukebox. When music does drop in, it feels earned, like the song was always waiting in the background of that world. The mix is so clean that you hear every layer, distant sirens, muffled arguments through walls, the rustle of a paper bag. It's immersive in a way that makes the screen feel like a window into a living, breathing place. And then there's the sheer confidence of the whole endeavor. This was a second-time director with an $8 million budget saying, "I'm going to tell the story out of order, fill it with long conversations about nothing and everything, make violence sudden and funny and ugly all at once, and trust the audience to keep up." That level of trust in the viewer is rare. Most films spoon-feed plot points and telegraph every twist. This one invites you to connect the dots yourself, rewarding patience and attention. It's the cinematic equivalent of a great novel that doesn't explain every reference or resolve every thread neatly. You leave the theater or your living room with pieces still clicking into place hours or days later. Let's keep this journey rolling because Pulp Fiction has endless depths, and every new angle makes you appreciate just how layered and deliberate Quentin Tarantino's vision really was. We're moving into even quieter, more subtle territory now, things you might not catch on the first watch, but that transform the film once you start noticing them. Consider how the movie treats time itself. But the nonlinear structure isn't just a gimmick, it's a statement about memory, consequence, and how events don't always happen in the neat order we remember them. Scenes overlap in ways that create echoes. A conversation in one timeline casts a shadow over another. A decision made off-screen suddenly explains behavior we saw earlier. This fractured chronology forces you to become an active participant. You're constantly mentally rearranging pieces, connecting dots across hours or days of story time. It mirrors real life more than most linear narratives do. Our own stories rarely unfold in perfect sequence. We jump back to explain why someone acted a certain way, or flash forward to show the fallout of a single moment. By refusing to spoon-feed chronology, Tarantino makes the audience complicit in piecing together meaning, which is why the film feels so personal, even though the characters are worlds apart from most viewers. Then there's the recurring motif of bathrooms. Yes, bathrooms. Almost every major character at some point steps into or out of one, and these moments often mark turning points. Someone enters a restroom ordinary and exits changed, or the simple act of using one creates vulnerability at the worst possible time. It's such a mundane location, yet Tarantino turns it into a liminal space where fate pivots. The pattern isn't accidental, it's woven in so naturally that you only realize its weight on repeat viewings. These quiet, private interludes contrast sharply with the public chaos elsewhere, reminding us that the most dangerous moments can happen when someone thinks they're alone, or when they're literally caught with their pants down. It's a small detail that adds psychological texture without ever drawing attention to itself. Food plays a surprisingly big role too, and not just as set dressing. Meals become rituals of normalcy in a world that's anything but normal. Characters sit down to eat, share fries, argue over what's on the menu, or desperately try to clean up a mess over breakfast. These scenes ground the absurdity. When everything else is spiraling, the act of ordering a burger or pouring coffee becomes an anchor to reality. The specificity matters. The exact way a character takes a bite, the casual debate over portion sizes, the way hunger or appetite reveals stress levels. Food here isn't symbolic in a heavy-handed way. It's humanizing. It shows people trying to hold on to routine while the universe refuses to cooperate. When that contrast between the comfort of a meal and the violence waiting outside the booth creates a tension that's uniquely unsettling and oddly comforting at the same time. The female characters, though fewer in number, carry enormous presence. Mia Wallace isn't just a trophy wife or a plot device. She's enigmatic, intelligent, dangerous in her own right, and fully aware of the power dynamics around her. Her choices drive entire sections of the story forward, and her silences speak louder than most monologues. Fabienne brings a different energy, soft, dreamy, almost childlike in her devotion, yet capable of cutting through Butch's tough exterior with a single look or word. These women aren't there to be saved or to motivate the men. They have their own agendas, their own fears, their own ways of surviving the same brutal world. Tarantino writes them with curiosity rather than judgment, letting their personalities breathe without reducing them to archetypes. That respect for their interior lives elevates the entire ensemble. The film's sense of humor is another element that ages beautifully. It's dark, dry, absurd, and rooted in character rather than punchlines. The laughs often come from how seriously people take ridiculous situations, arguing etiquette while holding someone at gunpoint, debating pop culture trivia during a crisis, or delivering deadpan observations in the middle of mayhem. That tonal tightrope, being deadly serious about silly things and treating serious things with a smirk, is incredibly hard to pull off. Yet it feels effortless here. The comedy never undercuts the stakes. If anything, it sharpens them. And you laugh because the characters are so committed to their bizarre logic, and that commitment makes their world feel believable even when it's outrageous. Finally, there's an undercurrent of redemption that runs through the whole thing without ever becoming sentimental. Not everyone gets a clean slate, but the possibility is always there. A moment of clarity, a small act of kindness, a refusal to pull the trigger when every instinct says otherwise. The film doesn't preach. It simply shows people at crossroads and lets them, and us, decide what comes next. That restraint is what gives the ending its power. It's hopeful without being tidy, earned without being predictable. You walk away feeling like the characters might actually change course, or they might not, but the door isn't slammed shut. Let's keep peeling back these layers because Pulp Fiction is one of those rare films where the more you look, the more it gives back, almost like it's designed to reward curiosity forever. We're venturing into territory now that lives in the quiet corners of the movie. The way it handles masculinity, the unspoken rules of its criminal universe, the rhythm of loyalty versus self-preservation, and how it turns ordinary American icons into something strangely mythic. Masculinity in this film isn't the chest-thumping, invincible kind you see in most action pictures. Instead, it's fragile, performative, constantly tested. Men here talk tough, carry guns, throw around authority, but underneath there's vulnerability everywhere. Fear of looking weak, anxiety about reputation, quiet panic when plans fall apart. Then Butch's entire storyline revolves around pride, legacy, and the terror of being seen as a coward. Vincent projects cool detachment but cracks under pressure in small human ways. Jules starts as the picture of righteous certainty and ends wrestling with something much softer. Even the smaller male characters, Lance, Pumpkin, Captain Coons, reveal cracks in the armor the moment they're pushed. Tarantino doesn't mock this. He observes it with a kind of affectionate curiosity. The result is a portrait of men who are trying desperately to live up to some invisible code, and the movie quietly asks whether that code is worth it, without ever delivering a lecture. The criminal world itself operates on its own unspoken etiquette, almost like a twisted version of chivalry. There are rules. You don't steal from the boss. You don't leave messes for others to clean. You honor a deal even when it's inconvenient. You show respect to the people above you, even if you hate them. Breaking those rules doesn't just get you killed, it gets you erased from the social fabric of this underworld. Winston Wolfe embodies that code perfectly. He's calm, professional, efficient, and utterly uninterested in drama. His arrival shifts the tone from chaos to procedure, reminding everyone, and us, that even in a violent world there is structure, hierarchy, and mutual dependence. It's fascinating how the film makes you root for people enforcing these rules while knowing the whole system is rotten. That moral ambiguity, cheering for competence inside a corrupt machine, is part of what keeps the movie morally slippery and endlessly discussable. Loyalty runs like a current beneath everything. It's not loud or sentimental, it's practical, almost contractual. People keep promises not because they're noble, but because their word is currency in a place where trust is scarce. A favor owed becomes a debt that must be repaid, sometimes years later, sometimes in the middle of the night. Characters risk everything, not for love or ideology, but to square accounts, to prove they're reliable, to avoid being the guy who let someone down. That code of reciprocity gives the relationships weight even when the people involved are killers and thieves. It's loyalty stripped of romance, cold, transactional, yet strangely honorable in its own brutal logic. You feel the cost of those bonds every time someone chooses the harder path simply because they said they would. And the movie also turns everyday American pop culture into something almost sacred. Fast food chains, old TV shows, muscle cars, rock and roll records, boxing legends, these aren't background noise. They're the mythology characters live inside. When people argue about burgers in Paris or reference forgotten sitcoms, it's not just filler, it's how they make sense of their lives. In a world without conventional morality or religion for most of them, these fragments of mass culture become the shared language, the common ground. A dance contest becomes a momentary escape into glamour, a watch becomes a talisman of heritage, a song on the radio becomes a lifeline. Tarantino takes the disposable stuff of 20th century America and treats it with reverence, turning kitsch into something quietly profound. It's a love letter to the junk we grew up on. and a reminder that meaning can hide in the most ordinary places. The editing rhythm deserves another moment, because it's so precise it almost feels invisible. Sally Menke cuts on emotion rather than action. A scene doesn't end because something big happens. It ends when the emotional beat lands, the moment a character finishes a thought, swallows a truth, or lets a silence stretch too long. That instinct for when to hold and when to release keeps the energy alive even in the talkiest sequences. The transitions between timelines feel like memory jumps. One second you're here, the next you're there, and somehow it makes perfect sense because the emotional thread carries you across. It's editing that trusts the audience's intelligence and rewards it with momentum that never lets you check out. And underneath it all is this strange sense of grace. Not religious grace exactly, though Jules flirts with the idea, but a secular version. The possibility that a person can wake up one morning and decide to be different. The film doesn't guarantee anyone will take that path, but it leaves the door cracked open. A character can walk through fire and come out the other side choosing mercy instead of vengeance, or professionalism instead of panic, or simply survival instead of self-destruction. Those moments of grace aren't triumphant, they're small, tentative, almost embarrassed. Yet they feel earned because we've seen how easy it would have been to choose the worse option. That restraint, never forcing a happy ending, never closing off hope, gives the whole movie a bittersweet aftertaste that lingers. Let's keep drifting deeper because Pulp Fiction is the kind of film that keeps opening new rooms the longer you stay inside it, and we're nowhere near running out of doors yet. This time, let's wander into how the movie handles power, the strange intimacy of violence, the way it romanticizes danger without ever apologizing for it, and how it turns Los Angeles into a character that's as alive and unpredictable as any of the people on screen. Power here isn't just about who has the gun or the money. It's about who controls the room with words, presence, or sheer unpredictability. Marcellus Wallace barely appears on screen for long stretches, yet his shadow dominates every decision. People whisper his name, adjust their plans around him, live in fear of disappointing him, even when he's miles away. And that off-screen menace is more terrifying than any on-screen showdown because it shows how power works in the real world. It's often invisible until it crushes you. Smaller power plays ripple everywhere, too. Jules commanding a room with scripture and intensity, Vincent trying to stay one step ahead of his own bad luck, Winston Wolfe walking in and instantly becoming the highest authority simply because he knows exactly what to do next. The film studies these microdynamics of dominance and submission without judgment, letting you see how fragile the balance really is. One wrong word, one missed cue, and the hierarchy flips. It's a quiet lesson in how control is never permanent, only borrowed for a moment. Violence in Pulp Fiction has an almost intimate quality, like a private conversation gone wrong. When it erupts, it's sudden, clumsy, a messy, not choreographed ballet. People flinch, stumble, bleed in ways that feel embarrassingly human. The camera doesn't glorify the act. It documents it with the same unflinching eye it uses for a diner breakfast. There's no slow-motion heroism, no triumphant music swell, just the ugly physics of bodies colliding and breaking. Yet that rawness creates a strange closeness between perpetrator and victim. In the moments right after, characters often talk to each other like nothing has fundamentally changed, which is both horrifying and oddly tender. They acknowledge the act, clean it up, move on, not because they're monsters, but because survival demands detachment. That push-pull between brutality and banality is what makes the violence linger in your mind long after you've left the theater. It's not about shock. It's about how quickly horror can become routine when you're living inside it. The movie also quietly romanticizes danger in a way that's hard to resist. Not the danger itself, but the lifestyle around it. The late-night drives through empty streets, the adrenaline of a close call, the camaraderie that forms when two people are staring down the same barrel. There's a seductive pull to the outlaw life here. The sharp suits, the fast cars, the ability to bend rules and walk away unscathed, at least for a while. Tarantino doesn't hide the cost. He shows the paranoia, the betrayals, the constant edge, but he also lets you feel the thrill. It's the same rush that draws people to noir novels or heist films, the fantasy of living outside the ordinary grid where every choice matters more because the stakes are life or death. The film never asks you to approve of these characters, but it does invite you to understand why someone might choose that path over a safer, duller one. That ambivalence is intoxicating. Los Angeles itself becomes the fifth lead. The city isn't just a backdrop, it's a sprawling, sun-bleached dreamscape where anything can happen and usually does. Freeways at night, palm trees against bruised skies, neon signs flickering over empty parking lots, diners that look like they haven't changed since the 50s. Tarantino shoots LA the way a lover photographs someone they know too well. Every blemish, every glow, every contradiction. The geography feels personal. Neighborhoods bleed into each other. Distances collapse. Familiar streets turn sinister at the wrong hour. You sense the sprawl, the isolation. And the way the city promises freedom but delivers anonymity. Characters drive endlessly, radio playing, talking through their lives, and the landscape mirrors their restlessness. It's a place where dreams go to either explode or quietly fade, and everyone in the movie knows it. That sense of place is so strong you can almost smell the exhaust and feel the heat rising off the asphalt. The performances carry an extra layer of lived-in authenticity because so many of the actors were either coming off career lows or stepping into roles that felt tailor-made. John Travolta brings a weary charisma that makes Vincent feel like a man who's seen too much but still wants to look good doing it. Samuel L. Jackson layers Jules with righteous fire that slowly cools into something more reflective. Uma Thurman gives Mia a cool, dangerous intelligence that makes every pause feel loaded. Bruce Willis plays Butch with the stubborn pride of someone who refuses to be anyone's pawn. These aren't just good performances, they're lived in, textured, full of tiny choices that reveal history we never see on screen. You believe these people have lives outside the frame because the actors make you feel the weight of those unseen years. And through it all runs this undercurrent of absurdity that keeps the film from tipping into grimness. Life-or-death situations interrupted by debates about hamburgers, foot rubs, or the exact wording of a threat. The humor isn't tacked on, it's baked into the worldview. These characters live in a universe where the profound and the ridiculous coexist without apology. A man can quote the Bible 1 minute and complain about his coffee the next. The way that tonal schizophrenia is what makes the movie feel so true to how people actually process crisis. We deflect, we joke, we cling to normalcy even when everything is falling apart. It's a survival mechanism, and Tarantino captures it perfectly. Let's keep this slow burn celebration going because Pulp Fiction never stops revealing itself, even after dozens of viewings. We're slipping now into the quieter, almost invisible craftsmanship that holds the whole wild ride together. The way silence works harder than dialogue in certain moments, how the film uses mirrors and reflections to double meaning, the subtle choreography of glances and body language, and the strange comfort the movie finds in repetition and ritual. Silence is one of the film's secret weapons. Tarantino is famous for talk, but he knows when to shut everyone up. There are long stretches where no one speaks. Eyes lock, breaths catch, hands hover near weapons, and those wordless beats carry more tension than any monologue. A stare across a diner table can feel heavier than a shouted threat. A slow pan across a room while characters process what just happened lets the audience sit in the aftermath, feeling the weight settle. These pauses aren't empty. They're loaded with everything the characters can't or won't say. They force you to read faces, posture, the tiny twitch of a finger. In a movie full of razor-sharp lines, the quiet moments are where the real emotional stakes live. They remind us that fear, regret, surprise, and even relief often don't need words to be felt. They just need space to exist. Mirrors and reflective surfaces appear more often than you might notice at first. And characters catch glimpses of themselves in bathroom mirrors, car windows, polished tabletops, diner counters. These aren't showy shots. They're quick, almost incidental. But every time someone sees their own reflection, it's a tiny confrontation with who they are in that exact second. Blood on their hands, doubt in their eyes, exhaustion they can't hide. The reflections double the image, suggesting split identities. The cool professional versus the man who's scared, the loyal partner versus the one considering betrayal. Tarantino uses these glimpses sparingly but deliberately, turning ordinary glass into a quiet commentary on self-awareness. You start noticing how rarely characters look directly at themselves for long. Most glances are fleeting, uncomfortable, like they don't want to linger on the truth staring back. Body language tells stories the dialogue only hints at. Watch how Vincent moves through a scene, loose shoulders when he's in control, tighter when he's out of his depth. Jules stands taller when he's preaching, shrinks slightly when doubt creeps in. Mia's posture shifts from languid confidence to coiled alertness in a heartbeat. Butch carries himself like a man protecting something fragile inside a shell of toughness. Even smaller gestures matter. The way someone adjusts a tie before walking into danger, how fingers drum on a steering wheel during a long silence, the subtle lean toward or away from another person. These micro-movements create an undercurrent of truth beneath the words. The actors were given room to physicalize their characters' inner lives, and that freedom makes every performance feel lived rather than acted. You believe these people because you see their bodies betraying what their mouths won't admit. Ritual and repetition weave through the film like a heartbeat. Lighting a cigarette the same way twice, reciting a familiar line under stress, returning to the same diner booth, driving the same stretch of road, these small ceremonies ground characters in a world that keeps trying to spin out of control. Repetition becomes a form of comfort, a way to pretend things are predictable even when they're not. The film itself repeats certain visual motifs: black suits against white shirts, blood on upholstery, coffee cups in hands. These echoes aren't lazy. They're rhythmic, like a song coming back to its chorus. They create a sense of familiarity within chaos, making the audience feel like we're part of the cycle too. By the time the story circles back to where it began, that repetition has built an emotional architecture. You're not just watching events, you're inside a closed loop where every choice echoes forward and backward. The Los Angeles night feels like its own character in ways that go beyond location. The way streetlights carve sharp shadows, how headlights cut through darkness, the low hum of distant traffic that never quite stops. It's a city that never fully sleeps, and neither do most of the people in it. Tarantino shoots the nocturnal hours with a kind of nocturnal affection. Neon bleeding into wet pavement, empty freeways that stretch forever, the glow of a payphone booth like a lonely beacon. These nighttime sequences carry a melancholy energy, a sense that the real conversations happen after the sun goes down, on when masks slip and truths leak out. The city at night becomes a confessional, a place where people can admit things they wouldn't say in daylight. That nocturnal mood seeps into the entire film, giving even daytime scenes an undercurrent of something waiting to happen after dark. The sound mix keeps rewarding close listening too. Layered underneath the dialogue and music are tiny details. The faint sizzle of a grill in the background, the click of a lighter, distant car horns, the rustle of a paper napkin. These ambient sounds create a believable world without ever drawing attention to themselves. When silence falls, those small noises become louder. The drip of a faucet, the creak of a chair, someone's unsteady breathing. The mix is so precise that you feel the space around the characters. Cramped apartments, echoing warehouses, wide open streets. It's immersive without being showy, letting the environment breathe alongside the people. And there's this persistent sense that the movie is watching itself watch the characters. Tarantino is aware of genre, aware of tropes, aware that we're aware. He plays with expectations, building toward violence, then swerving into conversation, teasing a payoff, then delaying it, letting scenes run longer than convention allows. That self-awareness never feels smug. It feels playful, like the film is winking at you while still taking its own story seriously. It's cinema that's in love with cinema, referencing old movies and pulp novels without ever feeling like a lecture. The result is a picture that feels both timeless and of its moment, rooted in 1994's indie spirit, yet speaking forward to everything that followed. Let's keep wandering these endless corridors, because Pulp Fiction is built like a house with secret passages. Every time you think you've seen every room, another door appears. This stretch, we're going to lean into the film's relationship with genre itself, how it toys with audience expectations like a cat with string, the way it weaponizes nostalgia without ever becoming sentimental, and how the simplest camera choices carry the heaviest emotional freight. Tarantino doesn't just borrow from old genres, he raids them, remixes them, and hands them back transformed. The film pulls threads from film noir's fatalism, blaxploitation's swagger, Hong Kong action's kinetic energy, French New Wave's cool detachment, spaghetti westerns, standoff tension, and even 1950s drive-in exploitation pictures. But instead of mimicking any one style, it mashes them into something new. A crime story told with the rhythm of a comedy sketch, the moral weight of a tragedy, and the visual flair of a music video. He lets you recognize the tropes: the hitmen in black suits, the mysterious briefcase, the boxer who won't take a dive, then subverts them just enough to keep you off balance. You think you know where a scene is headed because you've seen it in 100 other movies, and then he swerves. That playful betrayal of expectation is addictive. It makes every viewing feel like the first, because your brain keeps trying to predict what can't be predicted. Nostalgia here isn't soft-focus longing. It's sharp-edged and double-sided. The film looks back at mid-century American pop culture with genuine affection. The rockabilly tunes, the twist contests, the muscle cars, the diner jukeboxes, the old war stories. Yet it never pretends the past was innocent. Those golden-era icons are placed inside a present full of drugs, betrayal, casual murder, and moral drift. The result is nostalgia laced with irony. We love the look and sound of yesterday, but we see how hollow or dangerous the myths really were. When characters cling to pieces of that older world, a watch passed down through generations, a dance that feels like it belongs in another decade, they're reaching for something stable in a life that's anything but. Tarantino doesn't mock the longing. He honors it while showing how impossible it is to actually go back. That tension, wanting the comfort of myth while living the mess of reality, gives the film an ache that's hard to shake. Some of the most powerful moments come from the quietest camera decisions. A slow push-in on a face as a character realizes something irreversible. A wide shot that suddenly makes a room feel too small for the violence inside it. A handheld sway during a frantic drive that mirrors rising panic. These aren't flashy moves. They're restrained, almost invisible, yet they guide your emotions without you noticing. Tarantino and Andrzej Sakua trusted the frame to do heavy lifting. Let the composition tell you who's dominant in a conversation, who's cornered, who's about to break. A low angle can make someone towering and godlike for a second. A high angle can shrink them into vulnerability the next. The camera rarely moves for spectacle. It moves to follow feeling. That discipline keeps the energy intimate, even when the stakes are sky high. The dialogue rhythm deserves its own spotlight again, but from a different angle. It's conversational jazz. Lines bounce back and forth like musicians trading solos. Someone states a theme, another riffs on it, a third flips it upside down. The profanity isn't decoration. It's punctuation, emphasis, breathing room. Sentences build, pause, accelerate, circle back. Characters interrupt, repeat themselves for effect, correct each other mid-sentence. It's the sound of people who spend too much time together, who know each other's buttons, who use words as weapons, shields, and lifelines all at once. That verbal sparring makes even exposition feel alive. You're not being told backstory, you're overhearing real people negotiate their reality in real time. The film's moral center, if it has one, isn't in any single character or speech. It's in the small refusals to go further down the spiral. A moment where someone could kill and chooses not to. A decision to help instead of walk away. An admission of fear that humanizes instead of weakens. These aren't grand heroic turns. They're quiet, almost reluctant acts of restraint in a world that rewards the opposite. The movie never celebrates goodness loudly. It simply shows that decency is possible even here, and that choosing it costs something. That understated hope feels truer than any tidy redemption arc. It's grace with dirt under its nails. And let's talk about the ending. Not the plot, but the feeling it leaves. After all the circling timelines, all the near misses and narrow escapes, the film deposits you back where it started. But you're not the same person who walked in. The loop closes with a sense of fragile possibility rather than finality. Sad things could go one way or another tomorrow. And that's the point. Life doesn't tie up neatly. It keeps moving, keeps surprising, keeps offering second chances you might or might not take. That open-ended exhale is quietly radical in a medium that usually demands closure. Pulp Fiction remains a living thing because it refuses to settle. It's too funny to be tragedy, too dark to be comedy, too smart to be mindless, too heartfelt to be cynical. Every element, image, sound, word, silence, works in service of that restless energy. So when the night feels long or the world feels flat, return to it. Let the diner lights glow again. Let the radio crackle. Let the characters talk their way through another impossible moment. You'll find something waiting that wasn't there last time. A glance you missed, a line that hits different, a feeling you didn't know you needed. Let's keep this endless love affair with Pulp Fiction alive, because every new pass through the film uncovers another shade, another whisper, another reason it refuses to sit still in history. We're drifting now into the territory of how the movie treats fate versus choice, the erotic undercurrent that runs beneath certain scenes without ever becoming explicit, the way it turns ordinary objects into talismans of destiny, and how the entire structure feels like a dream you wake up from only to realize you're still inside it. Fate hangs over everything like cigarette smoke that never quite clears. Characters talk about luck, about being in the right place at the wrong time, about bullets that should have ended them but didn't. Yet the film never lets fate become an excuse. And every time someone blames "it was meant to be," another character pushes back with action, improvisation, sheer stubborn will. The tension between predestination and free will isn't resolved, it's lived. Jules sees a miracle and rethinks his entire path. Vincent sees the same event and shrugs it off as coincidence. Butch bets his life on a single desperate choice rather than accept a scripted defeat. The movie lets both views coexist without picking a winner, which is why it feels so alive. Life doesn't hand you answers, it hands you moments, and what you do in those moments defines the story more than any cosmic plan ever could. That refusal to tidy up the metaphysics leaves you carrying the question long after the screen fades to black. And there's an unmistakable erotic charge in certain sequences that has nothing to do with nudity or overt sexuality. It's in the way eyes linger a beat too long, the slow drag of a cigarette, the casual touch of a hand on a shoulder that carries more weight than it should. Mia and Vincent's night out crackles with unspoken possibility. The dance isn't just choreography, it's foreplay disguised as performance. The power dynamic shifts with every step, every glance, every sip of a drink. Even in moments of danger, the film finds sensuality and control. The precision of a needle, the calm authority of someone cleaning up chaos, the quiet thrill of getting away with something forbidden. Tarantino shoots desire the way a jazz musician plays a blue note. Subtle, delayed, felt more than seen. It adds another layer of heat to a movie already burning with tension, making the relationships feel dangerous in ways that go beyond guns and money. Ordinary objects keep turning into symbols of fate without ever feeling forced. A simple band-aid becomes proof that someone was listening when it mattered most. A wallet chain jingles like a warning bell. A pair of shorts holds more emotional weight than most wedding rings in other films. These aren't heavy-handed metaphors. They're everyday things that suddenly carry the full gravity of a life. The way characters handle them, tucking something away carefully, clutching it desperately, forgetting it at the worst possible moment, reveals everything about their priorities and fears. Tarantino has an almost fetishistic eye for the tactile, the shine of patent leather, the crinkle of paper, and the weight of metal in a pocket. By paying such close attention to the small and physical, he makes the metaphysical feel grounded. Destiny isn't abstract here. It's something you can hold, lose, or kill for. The structure itself starts to feel dreamlike the deeper you go. Time folds in on itself. Events echo forward and backward. Characters reappear in different contexts like figures from half-remembered nightmares. You begin to wonder if the whole thing is one long, feverish night in the mind of someone who's about to wake up changed, or not wake up at all. The diner bookends feel like the edges of a sleep cycle, falling asleep to one conversation, waking up to its dark twin. The nonlinear flow mimics how memory actually works. We don't remember our lives in straight lines. We remember in flashes, in associations, in sudden, vivid bursts that connect dots we didn't know were there. Watching the film becomes an act of dreaming awake. You surrender to the illogic, trust the rhythm, let the pieces reassemble themselves in your head. When it finally deposits you back at the beginning, the loop feels less like repetition and more like waking inside the same dream with new eyes. The soundscape keeps giving too, especially in how it uses diegetic music as emotional punctuation. A song doesn't just play, it interrupts, it comments, it saves or damns a moment. When "you never can tell" kicks in, it's not background. It's the heartbeat of an entire sequence. When silence swallows a track mid-note, the absence screams louder than any crescendo. The needle drops feel personal, almost confessional. Unlike the characters have their own private soundtrack running in their heads. That marriage of image and pre-existing song creates moments that feel stolen from real life. The perfect tune coming on the radio exactly when your mood needs it most, or a song turning sour the second reality crashes back in. And through every frame runs this stubborn belief in the power of a good story told well. The characters are constantly narrating their own lives, explaining choices, justifying actions, rewriting events to make them bearable. They're storytellers trapped inside someone else's plot trying to seize the pen. Tarantino hands the narrative reins to them in small ways. A monologue that shifts perspective, a flashback that reframes everything, a final twist that makes you question who was really driving the tale. It's meta without being smug. A reminder that we all live inside stories, and the best ones leave room for the teller to surprise even themselves. Let's keep sinking deeper because Pulp Fiction is one of those rare pieces of art that grows roots the longer you spend with it, sprouting new branches every time you think you've mapped the whole tree. We're easing now into how the film handles redemption without ever making it feel cheap, the way it turns profanity into a kind of poetry, how the color red keeps bleeding through as both warning and temptation, and why the movie ultimately feels like a love letter to second chances wrapped in barbed wire. Redemption here isn't a Hollywood glow-up with swelling strings and tearful confessions. It's grittier, more reluctant, more incomplete. When a character brushes up against something bigger than themselves, a near-death miss, a moment of unexpected mercy, a glimpse of what life could look like without the next score, they don't instantly become saints. They pause, they question, they might even try walking a different path for a minute, an hour, a day. But the film never promises they'll stay there. The possibility exists, fragile and flickering, like a match struck in a storm. That restraint is what makes any shift toward light feel authentic instead of manufactured. You believe someone could change because the movie shows how hard it is, how unnatural it feels in their world, how easy it would be to slide right back. Redemption isn't the destination, it's the uncomfortable question that lingers after the credits. What would you do if you got one more shot? The profanity isn't just flavor. It's architecture. The constant stream of fucks, shits, and motherfuckers builds its own cadence, almost hypnotic. It strips language down to raw impulse, then reassembles it into something rhythmic and deliberate. Characters curse to fill silence, to assert control, to mask fear, to bond, to wound. The repetition turns obscenity into a drumbeat that carries scenes forward when dialogue alone might stall. Tarantino treats four-letter words the way a blues guitarist treats bent notes. They're not mistakes, they're expression. The swearing feels lived in because it mirrors how real people talk when the stakes are high and the filters are off. Messy, repetitive, instinctive. By leaning so hard into it, the film makes the few moments of careful, measured speech hit like thunder. When someone chooses precise words over a barrage of curses, you know something fundamental has shifted. The color red threads through the movie like a nervous pulse. Blood, of course, but also the red booths in the diner, the glowing tip of a cigarette in the dark, the dress Mia wears when she's feeling reckless, the stoplights that characters run or wait at depending on their mood. Red signals danger, desire, interruption, consequence. It's never overused, but once you start seeing it, you can't unsee it. Every splash or flash feels like the film reminding you that violence, passion, and bad decisions are always one heartbeat away. The palate warms when characters are flirting with escape or intimacy, cools when calculation or regret takes over. And that subconscious color language pulls your emotions along without a single word of explanation. It's filmmaking at its most instinctive, trusting the eye to feel what the mind might overthink. And at its core, Pulp Fiction is quietly obsessed with second chances. Almost every major character gets at least one, a moment where the script of their life could have ended, but didn't. A gun misfires, a door stays locked, a stranger offers help instead of a bullet. These near misses aren't random. They're invitations to rewrite the ending, if only the person has the guts or the clarity to take them. The film doesn't judge who grabs the lifeline and who lets it slip. It simply shows the fork in the road and lets the characters and us stare at it. That generosity toward flawed people is what keeps the movie from feeling nihilistic. Under all the blood and banter, there's a stubborn belief that tomorrow isn't written yet, that even the worst track record doesn't lock you out of a different story. It's hope disguised as cynicism, mercy dressed up as indifference. The ensemble chemistry deserves one more moment in the spotlight. These actors don't just share scenes, they share history you can feel even in silence. The way Vincent and Jules finish each other's sentences without warmth or hostility, just familiarity. The guarded flirtation between Vincent and Mia that crackles like static. The quiet trust Butch places in a woman who never doubts him. The professional respect Winston commands the second he steps through a door. Every pairing carries its own temperature. Hot, cold, simmering, i.e. frozen. And the shifts between them create emotional weather you can track across the runtime. It's rare for a film this stylized to feel so lived in, but the cast makes it happen by playing the subtext as loudly as the text. The editing tempo keeps evolving on you too. Early viewings feel fast because of the dialogue velocity. Later ones feel slower because you start savoring the in-betweens, the held shots, the micro pauses, the way a cut arrives exactly when the emotion crests. Sally Menke's hand is so light you almost forget she's there, yet every transition serves the mood. Abrupt when panic spikes, languid when reflection settles in. The rhythm breathes with the characters, expanding in moments of calm, contracting in crisis. That organic pulse is why the 154 minutes never drag and never rush. They simply exist at the speed of real feeling. So here we are, still turning the film over in our hands like a puzzle box that keeps revealing new compartments. Pulp Fiction doesn't just entertain or shock or amuse, it provokes a kind of quiet recognition. This is what it feels like to be alive in a world that refuses to make sense, where grace and brutality share the same booth, where every choice might matter or might not, and where the only certainty is the next song on the jukebox. Whenever the days start feeling too predictable, come back to it. Let the neon flicker again. Let the coffee steam. Let the characters argue their way towards something better, or worse. The movie will be waiting, unchanged yet somehow different every time. Let's keep this slow, loving, unraveling going, because Pulp Fiction is the kind of film that never stops whispering new secrets the longer you sit with it. Like a friend who keeps revealing better stories the deeper into the night you talk. We're sliding now into how the movie treats professionalism as its own kind of religion, the strange beauty it finds in failure and incompetence, how the smallest acts of care become revolutionary in such a cynical world, and why the whole thing ultimately feels like a meditation on what it means to keep showing up even when everything screams to walk away. Professionalism in this universe isn't about morality. It's about craft, reliability, and the quiet pride of doing a dirty job cleanly. Winston Wolfe doesn't preach or posture. He arrives, assesses, directs, executes. That man leaves everyone better off than they were 5 minutes earlier. His calm authority comes from knowing exactly how to fold chaos back into order, step by meticulous step. Jules and Vincent have their routines too. The pre-job banter, the post-job cleanup, the unspoken agreement that the work comes first. Even when things go sideways, the best characters fall back on procedure. Check the gun, wipe the prints, move the body, keep talking like nothing's wrong. That devotion to process in the middle of horror is almost monastic. Tarantino turns hitmen into artisans, showing how a code of competence can become a lifeline when everything else has fallen apart. It's not heroic, it's practical, almost tender in its precision. You root for them, not because they're good people, but because they still care enough to do the job right. And yet the film is equally fascinated by failure, by the moments when competence crumbles. People forget details, misjudge situations, let ego override caution, or simply get unlucky. Those screw-ups aren't punished with cartoonish comeuppance. They're met with exhaustion, improvisation, and the grim humor of someone who's been here before. The beauty lies in how human those failures feel. A shaky hand, a panicked explanation, a desperate scramble to fix what's already broken. Tarantino never mocks incompetence. He photographs it with the same affection he gives success. The characters who keep fumbling aren't villains. They're just people trying to navigate a world that doesn't grade on a curve. That acceptance of messiness keeps the film from feeling cold or superior. Everyone is capable of both brilliance and disaster, and often in the same hour. In the middle of all that hardness, small gestures of care land like thunderclaps. A cup of coffee handed over without comment. A hand on a shoulder when words would fail. Someone staying to help clean up when they could have bolted. These aren't grand romantic gestures. They're quiet refusals to let someone drown alone. In a story full of betrayal and self-interest, those tiny acts of decency feel almost subversive. They remind you that even in the worst corners of life, people can still choose kindness without fanfare. The movie doesn't spotlight them with music cues or close-ups. It lets them happen naturally, almost offhand, which makes them hit harder. Care here isn't weakness. It's the last form of resistance against a world that wants everyone to look out only for themselves. The entire structure keeps asking what it means to show up, again and again when the odds are lousy and the payoff uncertain. Characters return to the diner, to the same routines, to the same dangerous partnerships, not because they're brave, but because walking away would mean admitting defeat. There's a stubborn continuity in their lives. Same black suits, same late-night drives, same arguments over nothing. That feels like defiance. They keep showing up for the next job, the next conversation, the next chance to get it right, or at least not get it catastrophically wrong. That persistence isn't celebrated with triumphant music. It's simply there, woven into every frame. The film honors the grind of existence without romanticizing it, letting you see how ordinary courage looks when it's dressed in everyday clothes. The lighting keeps reinforcing that mood too. Practical, unshowy, always motivated by the world itself. A single bulb swinging overhead in a dingy apartment casts long shadows that make every face look half guilty, half exhausted. Neon from outside bleeds through blinds in thin red and blue stripes, turning skin into something bruised and electric. The diner fluorescents are merciless, washing everyone in a cold, honest light that hides nothing. Tarantino and Sakua never force glamour. They let the available light do the emotional work. Faces emerge from darkness only when a character steps into truth, recede back when they retreat into denial. That naturalistic approach makes the performances feel documentary-like. You're not watching actors, you're watching people caught in headlights they can't outrun. And the ending loop. That return to the opening scene isn't just clever storytelling. It's a quiet promise that life keeps circling back on itself. You get another chance to hear the same conversation, but this time, you know what's coming. You know the cost. You know the miracles that almost happened elsewhere. That second pass through the same moment changes everything without changing a single line. It's the film saying, pay attention, because the meaning isn't in what happens. It's in how you carry what happened into the next identical morning. The diner booth becomes a kind of eternal now, where the same people can still choose differently or choose the same thing and mean it more. So we keep turning the film in our hands, finding new facets every time the light hits it differently. Pulp Fiction is brutal and hilarious, philosophical and profane, hopeful and unflinching all at once. It doesn't resolve anything neatly because life doesn't. It simply invites you to sit in the booth a little longer, listen a little closer, laugh a little harder at the absurdity of it all. Whenever the world feels too heavy or too hollow, come back here. The coffee's still brewing, the jukebox is still spinning, and the night is still full of possibility. Let's keep this deep, unhurried journey rolling because Pulp Fiction has this magical quality where the more you linger in its world, the more it starts to feel like a living memory, rather than just a movie on a screen. We're easing now into how the film quietly celebrates improvisation as the ultimate survival skill, the way it turns betrayal into something almost intimate, how the constant motion of cars and feet becomes its own kind of heartbeat, and why the whole experience ultimately leaves you with this strange, exhilarating sense that ordinary days can still hold extraordinary turns if you're paying close enough attention. Improvisation isn't a side note in this story. It's the lifeline. When plans collapse, when the script of the day gets torn up, the characters who endure are the ones who can think on their feet without freezing. A wrong address, a spilled cup, a sudden change of heart. These aren't obstacles to overcome with brute force. They're invitations to adapt, to talk your way out, to turn disaster into something manageable. Jules shifts from preacher to philosopher in the space of a single breath because he knows rigid thinking gets you killed. Vincent keeps moving forward, even when every instinct screams to stop, because stopping means surrender. The beauty is in how unheroic that adaptability looks. Sweaty palms, forced smiles, half-formed excuses delivered with desperate conviction. Tarantino films these moments with the same steady gaze he gives the big set pieces, letting you see that true skill isn't in having the perfect plan. It's in having the nerve to make up a new one when the old one dies. That faith in quick thinking feels profoundly optimistic in a genre that usually rewards cold calculation. Betrayal, when it flickers through, carries a peculiar closeness. It's never distant or abstract. It's personal, face-to-face, often between people who have shared too many cigarettes and too many close calls. The hurt isn't shouted. It's registered in a slight widening of eyes, a pause that's 1 second too long, a hand that hesitates before reaching for a weapon. And these moments sting because the film has already convinced you these relationships matter, even if they're built on shaky ground. Loyalty isn't absolute here. It's conditional, tested constantly, and when it frays, the pain feels earned rather than melodramatic. Yet even in those fractures, there's no cartoon villainy. People betray for reasons that make sense in their heads: fear, greed, self-preservation, or just the exhaustion of carrying everyone else's weight. The movie doesn't condemn or excuse. It observes, letting the ache settle naturally so you feel the cost without being told what to think. The constant movement, cars rolling down freeways, feet pacing diner aisles, hands gesturing through explanations, creates a restless pulse that mirrors the characters' inner lives. Almost no one stands still for long. Driving becomes therapy. An escape, confrontation, all at once. Tires hum against asphalt while confessions spill out. Headlights cut through rain while decisions hang in the balance. Engines idle while silences stretch into something dangerous. Those journeys aren't filler. They're where the real thinking happens, where characters talk themselves into or out of choices they can't make while sitting down. Tarantino shoots the interiors of cars with the same intimacy he gives bedrooms or confessionals. Tight frames, soft dashboard glow, the world blurring past outside like a half-forgotten dream. That sense of forward motion keeps the energy alive even in the quietest scenes, reminding you that life doesn't pause for reflection. It keeps carrying you whether you're ready or not. And the film also has this gentle insistence that the everyday can still surprise you with meaning. A random act of kindness from a stranger, an overheard song that hits at exactly the right second, a forgotten detail that suddenly unlocks everything. These aren't coincidences the movie waves away. They're proof that the universe occasionally throws lifelines to people who least expect them. Characters don't always recognize the gift when it arrives. Sometimes they walk right past it. Sometimes they grab it too late. But the possibility is always there, tucked into the margins of the chaos. That belief in small miracles without fanfare gives the story a warmth that sneaks up on you. It's not sappy optimism. It's the stubborn acknowledgement that even in a hard world, grace can arrive wearing the most ordinary disguise. The wardrobe choices keep telling their own silent story too. Black suits aren't just cool, they're armor, a uniform that says, "We belong to this life," even when the people inside are questioning it. Mia's outfits shift with her moods, sleek and commanding one moment, vulnerable and barefoot the next. Butch's clothes carry the weight of his past, leather jacket like a second skin, boxing gear that represents both glory and shame. Every fabric, every stain, every wrinkle feels intentional, as if the costumes are aging with the characters in real time. The way clothes get ruined, blood, coffee, sweat, marks the progression of a single night, turning pristine outfits into battle scars. That physical transformation mirrors the internal ones without ever needing dialogue to explain it. And the laughter that bubbles up unexpectedly is another layer that keeps the film from tipping into despair. It's the kind of humor born from shared absurdity. Two people staring at the same impossible mess and realizing the only sane response is to crack a joke. Those laughs aren't cheap relief valves, they're lifelines, proof that even when everything is falling apart, the human spirit can still find something ridiculous enough to smile at. Tarantino spaces them perfectly. Just when tension peaks, a line lands that breaks the spell long enough to breathe. The comedy feels organic because it's rooted in character. People using wit as defense, as connection, as defiance against a world that wants them serious and scared. So we keep walking these streets together, finding new corners of the movie to love a little more each time. Pulp Fiction doesn't just show you a story, it hands you a feeling, a rhythm, a way of looking at the messy, beautiful, terrifying business of being alive. Whenever the ordinary starts feeling too small or the nights too long, come back to this diner, to these voices, to this music that still sounds fresh after all these years. The seats are worn but warm, the coffee never quite cools, and the conversation is always picking up right where you left it. Let's keep this gentle, never-ending drift through Pulp Fiction alive because the film has this beautiful habit of revealing itself in whispers rather than shouts, offering new shades of light every time you lean in closer. We're moving now into how the movie quietly elevates the act of listening as its own form of power, the strange comfort it finds in routine amid chaos, how the smallest physical details of touch and proximity carry unspoken narratives, and why the entire experience ultimately feels like an invitation to notice the poetry hiding inside the most ordinary, unglamorous moments of life. Listening in this world is never passive, it's active, strategic, sometimes the only weapon left. Characters lean in when someone speaks, eyes narrowing, heads tilting, bodies shifting closer, as if the words themselves have physical weight. Jules doesn't just hear Vincent's complaints, he absorbs them, turns them over, lets them simmer until they become ammunition or insight. Mia listens to Vincent's stories with a half-smile that says she's already 3 steps ahead. Even in the middle of threats and standoffs, ears stay sharp. A hesitation in a voice, a catch in a breath. A word choice that betrays more than the speaker intended. Tarantino gives listening its own visual grammar. Close shots on ears, on lips forming reluctant truths, on faces registering the exact second understanding clicks. The power dynamic flips the moment someone truly hears what's being said instead of just waiting for their turn to talk. In a film full of loud personalities, the quiet act of paying attention becomes almost sacred, a rare currency in a place where most people are too busy performing to really hear. Routine becomes a kind of armor against the unpredictable. The same diner booth, the same black suits, the same drive to the same apartment complex. These repetitions aren't boring, they're stabilizing. Characters return to familiar patterns the way someone might touch a lucky coin during turbulence. Well, the coffee poured the same way, the cigarette lit with the same flick, the radio dial turned to the same station. These small ceremonies create islands of predictability in a sea of sudden violence. When everything else can change in an instant, the ritual of doing what you've always done offers a fragile sense of control. Tarantino photographs these habits with tender patience. The way a hand knows exactly where the sugar is without looking, how a body settles into a booth like it belongs there. Routine isn't escape, it's survival, a way to remind yourself you're still the same person you were yesterday, even if the world keeps trying to prove otherwise. Touch carries its own silent dialogue throughout. Hands brush against shoulders in reassurance or warning, fingers tap impatiently on tabletops, on palms press flat against steering wheels during long silences. Physical contact is sparse but deliberate, never accidental, always loaded. A hand on a knee can mean comfort, threat, seduction, apology, depending on the context and the person. The rare moments of genuine tenderness, a gentle adjustment of clothing, a brief clasp of fingers, land with disproportionate impact because the film has trained you to notice every inch of space between bodies. Proximity itself becomes a language. How close someone stands when they lie, how far they pull away when trust frays. These tactile details turn abstract emotions into something you can almost feel on your own skin. The camera lingers just long enough on a hand hesitating before touching, or withdrawing after, to let the unspoken hang in the air. The poetry of the ordinary is perhaps the film's most subversive gift. A man washing blood from his hands in a kitchen sink while arguing about coffee. A woman dancing alone in her living room like no one's watching. A boxer staring at a watch that survived wars and generations. These aren't climactic moments. They're the in-between beats that make the story breathe. Tarantino finds lyricism in the mundane. The steam rising from a cup, the flicker of a television nobody's really watching, the sound of footsteps echoing down an empty hallway. He shoots these slices of everyday life with the same reverence he gives the gunfights and monologues, refusing to rush past them. The result is a film that insists the small, unglamorous details are where life actually happens, where fear settles, where hope flickers, where people decide who they're going to be when nobody's looking. It's a quiet rebellion against the idea that only big, explosive events matter. The pacing keeps evolving with you too. First watches feel propelled by the dialogue's velocity and the sudden bursts of action. Later ones slow down because you start living in the pauses, the way a character exhales after a near miss, the second it takes for a joke to land, the long look exchanged when words aren't enough. Those extended beats aren't dead air. They're where the emotional texture thickens. You begin to appreciate how the film trusts silence and stillness to do work that faster editing never could. It lets moments ripen instead of forcing them to burst. That patience is rare in modern cinema. And it's part of what makes returning to Pulp Fiction feel restorative rather than repetitive. So we keep sitting in this booth together, watching the same people order the same food, argue the same points, face the same impossible choices, and somehow find new meaning every time. The movie doesn't demand you solve it. It just asks you to stay a while longer, to listen a little deeper, to notice the way light falls across a face, or how a song changes the temperature of a room. It's a film that rewards the patient eye and the open heart, proving that even in a story full of killers and thieves, there's still room for wonder. Let's keep this quiet, never-ending conversation flowing because Pulp Fiction has that rare gift of feeling like it's still happening somewhere right now, even when the screen is dark. We're slipping deeper still into how the film turns waiting into its own dramatic art form, the way it makes exhaustion look almost noble, how the act of cleaning up becomes a metaphor for trying to put life back together, and why the whole thing quietly insists that being seen, really seen, for who you are in your worst moment can be the closest thing to salvation these characters ever get. Waiting is everywhere in this movie, and Tarantino makes it electric. Characters sit in cars idling at red lights that feel eternal, linger in hallways while footsteps approach, perch on the edge of a bathtub staring at a closed door. These stretches of nothing happening yet are loaded with everything that could happen next. The camera doesn't cut away to fill the void. It stays, by letting the anticipation build in your chest the same way it builds in theirs. A foot tapping, a cigarette burning down to the filter, eyes flicking to a clock that refuses to move faster. The waiting isn't dead time. It's the purest expression of vulnerability. In a world where action usually means violence or escape, the decision to stay put, to endure the uncertainty instead of forcing an outcome, becomes its own kind of bravery. Those long-held shots of people simply waiting for the next shoe to drop remind you that courage isn't always loud movement. Sometimes it's the strength to remain still when every nerve is screaming to run. Exhaustion threads through the characters like a second skin they can't shed. Eyes heavy from too many late nights, voices rough from too much talking and too little sleep. Bodies that move with the slow drag of someone who's been carrying weight for years. Yet that weariness isn't portrayed as weakness. It's almost dignified. Vincent slumps against a wall after a long drive. Jules rubs his face like he's trying to wipe away the day. Butch walks with the limp of a man who's taken too many hits. Tarantino photographs fatigue with the same care he gives beauty. The way light catches the sheen of sweat on a forehead, how shoulders round under an invisible load, the small sigh that escapes when someone finally sits down. There's a strange honor in how these people keep functioning despite being bone-tired, driving through the night, talking their way out of corners, cleaning messes they didn't make. The film never romanticizes burnout, but it does show how refusing to quit when you're running on fumes can look quietly heroic. Cleaning up, literal and figurative, becomes one of the most recurring, almost ritualistic acts. Blood on upholstery, bodies in awkward positions, evidence that needs to disappear before dawn. Winston Wolfe turns the gruesome task into something methodical, almost meditative. Gloves on, tarps down, instructions delivered in calm, measured tones. The act of erasing traces isn't just practical. It's an attempt to restore order, to pretend the chaos never happened, to give everyone a chance to walk away and start the next day as if nothing broke. Characters scrub hands until the skin is raw, wipe surfaces until they gleam, dispose of what can't be explained. That physical labor mirrors the emotional one, trying to wash away guilt, regret, and the stain of choices that can't be undone. The movie lingers on these cleanup sequences not for gore, but for the quiet determination they reveal. People still trying to fix what they've shattered, still believing the world can be made right again with enough effort and bleach. And then there's the profound relief that comes from being truly seen, even in your lowest moment. When someone looks at you, not at the role you're playing, not at the mask you've worn for years, but at the scared, flawed human person underneath, and doesn't turn away, something shifts. Jules sees Vincent in a way no one else has. Mia sees Vincent's awkwardness and doesn't mock it. Butch sees Fabienne's vulnerability and chooses gentleness over toughness. These glances aren't dramatic declarations. They're small, unguarded recognitions that say, "I see you, and all of you, the mess and the good parts, and I'm still here." In a film packed with posturing and performance, those rare moments of being witnessed without judgment feel like oxygen after holding your breath too long. The movie suggests that real connection isn't built on perfection. It's built on the courage to let someone see the cracks and the willingness to stay anyway. The nighttime driving scenes deserve one more breath of appreciation because they capture loneliness and companionship in the same frame. Headlights carving tunnels through darkness, dashboard glow painting faces in soft green and orange, radio voices filling the silence without demanding anything back. Characters talk in these cars like they can't anywhere else. Half confessions, half jokes, truths that slip out when the road keeps moving and there's nowhere to hide. The motion creates safety. You don't have to face each other directly. You can look out the window while you speak. Let the words drift into the night instead of landing heavy between you. Those drives aren't just transportation. They're therapy, confessionals, last chances to say what needs saying before the next crisis arrives. So we keep sitting here together, letting the film unfold its quiet revelations one more time. Pulp Fiction doesn't shout its wisdom. It murmurs it between lines, in pauses, in the way a hand rests on a wheel or a pair of eyes meet across a booth. It's a movie about people who keep going even when they have every reason to stop, who find meaning in the small repairs they make to broken days, who discover that being seen at your worst can feel like being saved. Whenever the world starts feeling too fast or too indifferent, come back to these streets, these voices, this diner that never closes. Let's keep this long, slow exhale of appreciation moving forward, because Pulp Fiction has layers that keep unfolding like smoke you can never quite catch, always revealing one more glint of light the longer you watch it drift. We're stepping now into how the film makes vulnerability feel like strength rather than shame, the way it turns everyday sounds into emotional anchors, how the act of sharing a meal becomes its own quiet sacrament, and why the movie ultimately whispers that even people who live on the edge can still reach for something softer without losing who they are. Vulnerability here isn't a breakdown. It's a deliberate choice, small and sharp, that cuts through the armor everyone wears. A character admitting they're scared doesn't make them smaller. It makes the room feel bigger, the stakes higher, the connection realer. Jules doesn't preach when he opens up about what shook him. He speaks quietly, almost to himself, and the shift in his voice alone carries more weight than any shouted revelation. Vincent lets slip a moment of genuine confusion without turning it into a joke, and suddenly the cool exterior cracks just enough to let something human breathe. These aren't big confession scenes with swelling music. They're offhand admissions dropped into casual conversation, yet they land like stones in still water, rippling outward. Tarantino treats these moments with reverence. The camera holds steady, the sound drops to let the words hang. The other person simply listens instead of fixing or mocking. But vulnerability becomes power because it's rare, honest, and chosen, not forced. In a world that punishes weakness, the courage to show a soft spot without apology feels almost revolutionary. Everyday sounds become lifelines you don't notice until they're gone. The low clink of ice in a glass during a tense standoff, the soft hiss of a soda being opened in a car at 3 a.m., the distant murmur of traffic that never quite stops. These aren't background noise. They're proof the world keeps turning, even when your own is tilting. When silence falls heavy after a gunshot or a confession, those ambient details rush back in like breath after holding it too long. The ticking of a turn signal in an empty intersection, the creak of leather as someone shifts in their seat, the faint crackle of a vinyl record before the song begins. They ground you and remind you that life continues in tiny, stubborn ways, no matter how close everything came to stopping. Tarantino layers these sounds so carefully that you start hearing the movie as much as seeing it. The audio becomes another character, quietly insisting that normalcy is always waiting just outside the frame, ready to reclaim the space if you let it. Sharing food turns into something close to sacred without ever feeling forced. A burger passed across a table, fries dipped in the same ketchup, coffee refilled without asking. These aren't just meals. They're truces, apologies, moments of truce in lives that rarely allow rest. People eat together when they can't talk, when words would break something fragile, when sitting in the same booth is the closest they can get to saying, "I'm still here with you." The act is simple. You're almost childlike, tearing open a wrapper, offering the first bite, wiping sauce from a chin with a napkin handed over without comment. Tarantino shoots these scenes with warmth. He rarely gives the violence. Soft focus on hands breaking bread, steam rising between faces, the small sounds of chewing and swallowing that fill the quiet. Food becomes communion in the truest sense, a way to say we are still alive, still hungry, still willing to share what little we have. In a story soaked in blood and betrayal, those shared bites feel like the purest form of trust left. The movie also gently insists that hardness and softness can coexist in the same person without contradiction. A man who can kill without blinking can still pause to fix a woman's shoe. A woman who dances like she owns the room can still curl into herself when the high wears off. And characters aren't split into good and bad halves. They're whole, contradictory, capable of cruelty one minute and unexpected tenderness the next. Tarantino never forces them to choose a side. He lets them carry both, sometimes in the same breath. That refusal to simplify makes everyone feel real, flawed, inconsistent, human. The film doesn't ask you to forgive them. It asks you to see them fully, sharp edges and gentle ones together, and understand that people are rarely only one thing. That complexity is what keeps the characters breathing long after the story loops back to its beginning. The final stretch of any viewing leaves this lingering taste of possibility that sneaks up on you. Not tidy resolution, not guaranteed happy endings, just the quiet knowledge that tomorrow morning still exists, that coffee will still be poured. That conversations half-finished can pick up again. The diner booth waits like it always has, the same fluorescent light buzzing overhead, the same waitress moving through her routine. Characters walk out into the same night they walked in, but something has shifted inside them, small and unshowy, the way dawn changes the color of a room without anyone noticing the exact moment it happened. The movie ends not with a bang or a moral, but with an open door. Life continues, choices keep coming, second chances keep arriving disguised as ordinary days. So we keep returning to this place together, finding new echoes every time we sit down. Pulp Fiction isn't a film you finish. It's one you carry, one that keeps rearranging itself in your memory, one that reminds you the most powerful stories don't tie everything up. They leave threads dangling so you can keep pulling. Whenever the noise of the world gets too loud or the nights feel too empty, come back here. The stools are still spinning slowly, the coffee pot is still warm, the music is still waiting for the next quarter. Let's keep this gentle, ever-widening circle around Pulp Fiction spinning because the film has this quiet way of expanding inside you, like a conversation that started 30 years ago and never really paused for breath. We're easing now into how the movie makes the invisible visible, the unspoken rules that everyone follows without saying them out loud, the way fear and excitement share the same heartbeat in certain scenes, how the simple act of remembering becomes an act of defiance, and why the whole thing ultimately feels like proof that even the most jaded hearts can still be startled by something genuine. The unspoken code runs beneath every interaction, like an underground current nobody names, but everyone obeys. You don't point a gun at the boss's wife unless you want to disappear. You don't leave a partner hanging when the job goes sideways. You don't ask too many questions when someone shows up at 3 a.m. needing help. These aren't written laws. They're survival instincts etched into muscle memory. Characters navigate them with the same automatic grace they use to light a cigarette or shift gears. Instinctive, unthinking, almost elegant in their grim efficiency. Tarantino never spells out the rules. He lets you feel them in the hesitations, the averted eyes. Now the way a hand moves slowly toward a jacket instead of fast. That invisible architecture gives the chaos shape, turning random violence into something almost orderly. You sense the code most when someone breaks it. The sudden stillness, the sharp intake of breath, the ripple of consequences that follows. It's filmmaking that trusts you to read between the lines, to understand power without a single line of exposition telling you who holds it. Fear and excitement live so close together in this world that their pulses feel identical. A character steps into a room knowing anything could happen. Death, discovery, a miracle. And the anticipation crackles like static before a storm. Eyes widen just a fraction, breath shorten, fingers flex against leather or metal. Well, the camera catches these micro shifts without fanfare. A bead of sweat tracing a temple, a tongue darting across dry lips, a glance that lingers 1 second too long on an exit. Tarantino doesn't separate the terror from the thrill. He lets them bleed into each other so you feel both at once. It's the same rush that makes people ride roller coasters or tell dangerous truths. The edge where control slips and possibility floods in. Those scenes hum with life because they capture how adrenaline sharpens everything. The taste of coffee, the weight of a gun, the sound of your own heartbeat in your ears. The film never judges the characters for craving that edge. It simply shows how alive they feel when they're balanced on it. Remembering becomes a quiet form of resistance in a life that keeps trying to erase the past. A watch carried through wars and prisons isn't just timekeeping. It's evidence that someone once cared enough to pass something down. A name dropped in conversation carries the ghost of old scores, old promises, old wounds that never fully healed. Characters cling to these fragments the way a drowning person clings to driftwood. Not because they're sentimental, but because memory is proof they existed before this moment, before this job, before this night. When someone recalls a detail, a song from years ago, a conversation half forgotten, a face that should be dead, the story pauses to let it breathe. Tarantino gives those recollections space, a slow zoom on a face as recognition dawns, a cut to black and white memory that feels more real than the present. Remembering isn't nostalgia here. It's survival, a way of saying, I was here, I mattered, and part of me still does. The film honors those small acts of recall because they keep the characters from dissolving completely into the roles they play. The movie also has this understated belief that authenticity, even flawed, ugly, inconvenient authenticity, can still cut through the performance everyone else is running. When someone drops the act for a second, admits they don't have all the answers, shows confusion instead of certainty, lets a genuine laugh escape instead of a calculated smirk, the air in the scene changes. Other characters notice. They lean in, they soften, they respond in kind. It's not a Hollywood epiphany with tears and hugs. It's subtler, more guarded. A nod, a half smile, a decision to lower the weapon just a fraction. Those flashes of realness are rare and brief, but they leave traces. And they remind everyone, and us, that beneath the suits, the swagger, the scripts, there are still people who feel things, who get tired, who want connection, even if they've forgotten how to ask for it. The film doesn't force redemption through these moments. It simply shows that being real for even 30 seconds can shift the trajectory of an entire night. The way the film handles endings, small ones, not just the big loop, deserves its own breath. Scenes don't always close with resolution. Sometimes they trail off into the next uncertainty. A car pulling away into darkness, a door clicking shut, footsteps fading down a hallway. Those open endings aren't frustrating. They're honest. Life rarely gives clean breaks. It just moves you to the next frame. Tarantino lets those transitions linger. Lets the sound carry the weight. An engine revving into distance, a radio song bleeding through walls, the soft clatter of dishes being cleared. The lack of tidy closure keeps the energy alive, keeps you wondering what happens after the cut, keeps the characters feeling like they exist beyond the runtime. So we keep lingering here together, letting the film keep surprising us with its quiet depths. Pulp Fiction doesn't demand you decode it. It just asks you to sit with it, to notice how a single glance can carry a whole history, how a half-spoken truth can change the temperature of a room, how people keep finding ways to be human even when the world gives them every excuse not to. Whenever the days blur together or the nights feel too quiet, come back to this. The diner light still buzzes the same way, the coffee still steams, the stories still circle without ever quite landing. Let's keep this soft, persistent glow around Pulp Fiction burning, because the film has a way of settling into your bones the longer you let it breathe, quietly rewriting what you thought you knew about storytelling, about people, about the strange beauty that can hide inside damage. We're drifting now into how the movie makes trust feel like the rarest luxury, the way it turns small rebellions against routine into bursts of life, how the simple act of choosing mercy over momentum can feel revolutionary, and why the whole thing ultimately leaves you with this gentle conviction that even the darkest nights still hold pockets of unexpected light. Trust in this world isn't given freely. It's earned in fractions, tested in seconds, and fragile enough that one wrong move can shatter it forever. Characters don't trust easily because they've learned what happens when they do. Betrayal stings sharper when it comes from someone you let close. Yet when trust does flicker, when Vincent hands over the keys without hesitation, when Jules chooses to walk away instead of finishing what he started, when Butch decides to risk everything for a promise made years ago, it lands with the weight of something sacred. Tarantino shoots these moments without fanfare. A quick exchange of glances, a slight nod, a hand extended and taken without words. The camera stays close but never pushes in too hard, letting the act speak for itself. Trust here isn't blind faith. It's a calculated risk taken because the alternative, constant suspicion, endless isolation, feels even heavier. Those rare moments when someone chooses to believe in another person, even for a single night, become the quietest, most powerful victories in a film full of louder ones. Small rebellions against the grind keep surfacing like sparks in dry grass. A character refuses to follow the script exactly as written, takes an extra minute to enjoy a song, lingers over a meal instead of rushing out, lets a laugh escape when protocol demands silence. These tiny acts of defiance aren't grand gestures. They're whispers of individuality in a life that tries to flatten everyone into roles. Mia dancing alone in her living room isn't just movement. It's a private declaration that she still exists outside the expectations placed on her. Vincent pausing to argue about fast food names isn't pedantry. It's a refusal to let the job swallow every second of his personality. Tarantino treasures these micro-rebellions because they prove the spirit hasn't been completely crushed yet. They remind you that even people who live by someone else's rules can still carve out slivers of freedom, still remind themselves they're more than their function. Choosing mercy over momentum is one of the film's most understated miracles. When the easy path is to pull the trigger, to walk away, to let consequences fall where they may, someone occasionally stops. Not out of weakness, not out of sentimentality, but because a flicker of something, recognition, empathy, simple weariness, makes continuing feel wrong. These pauses aren't heroic in the classic sense. They're human, messy, often accompanied by confusion or doubt. Yet they ripple outward, changing trajectories without anyone noticing the exact pivot point. The movie doesn't glorify the choice with slow motion or swelling strings. It lets it happen plainly, almost awkwardly, so the weight feels real. Mercy here isn't a reward, it's a risk, a quiet bet that breaking the cycle might be worth whatever comes next. That restraint makes the moments land deeper. You believe them because they cost something. The film also carries this subtle thread that even the hardest lives can still be startled by beauty. A song comes on the radio and catches someone off guard, making them smile despite themselves. A sunrise bleeds through blinds after a night that should have ended them, and for a second the light feels like forgiveness. A stranger's small kindness, a towel offered, a door held, pierces the cynicism just long enough to let air in. These flashes aren't plot points, they're grace notes, brief reminders that the world hasn't completely hardened. Tarantino scatters them like unexpected gifts, never enough to overwhelm the grit, just enough to keep hope from feeling impossible. The beauty isn't loud or permanent, it's fleeting, fragile, all the more precious because it arrives uninvited in places that should be too broken for it. The way the film handles closure, both big and small, keeps it feeling alive long after the last frame. It doesn't force neat bows, it lets threads dangle, lets questions hang, lets characters walk off into uncertainty with the same mix of weariness and possibility they carried in. And that open-ended quality mirrors real nights. You rarely get a clean finish, just a pause before the next thing begins. The diner returns like a heartbeat, the same faces ordering the same things. Yet something has shifted in the air, subtle, unspoken, but undeniable. You leave the theater, or your couch, carrying that shift with you, wondering what small change might still be waiting in your own ordinary mornings. So we keep holding space for this film together, letting it keep surprising us with its tenderness wrapped in toughness. Pulp Fiction doesn't preach or resolve. It simply sits with you, shares a cigarette's worth of truth, then lets you walk away a little less sure of everything and a little more open to whatever comes next. Whenever life starts feeling scripted or numb, slip back into these streets. The neon still flickers the same way. The conversations still circle without landing, and the possibility of something better still waits in the margins. Let's keep this slow, unbroken current flowing because Pulp Fiction has the kind of depth that never runs dry, always offering one more quiet revelation when you least expect it, like a conversation that circles back just to show you the same room from a slightly different angle. We're slipping now into how the film makes hesitation feel like its own kind of eloquence, the way it turns the ordinary glance into a loaded exchange, how the simple decision to keep breathing after everything falls apart becomes its own small triumph, and why the movie ultimately feels like proof that even when the night seems endless, dawn still finds a way to creep in. That hesitation in this world isn't weakness. It's thinking, feeling, recalibrating in real time. A finger pauses on a trigger, a foot freezes mid-step, a mouth opens, then closes before the words escape. Those split-second pauses carry entire unspoken monologues, doubt, recognition, the sudden weight of consequence. Tarantino lets the camera rest on them without rushing, close enough to catch the flicker in an eye, the slight tightening of a jaw, the breath that catches and holds. The hesitation isn't dramatic posturing. It's human machinery grinding against instinct, against habit, against the easier path. When someone finally moves, whether to pull back, to speak, to walk away, the choice feels earned because you've lived inside that suspended second with them. The film honors those frozen moments as much as the action that follows, reminding you that real decisions rarely arrive fully formed. They emerge from the quiet friction between what you want and what you know you should do. The ordinary glance becomes one of the most powerful currencies here. Eyes meet across a diner table, lock in a rearview mirror, flick toward each other in a hallway lit only by emergency strips. These aren't lingering romantic stares. They're assessments, questions, warnings, invitations, all compressed into a fraction of a second. A glance can say, "I see you planning something," without a word, or "Don't do this," with more force than any shouted command. Tarantino films them with precision, the slight widening of pupils, the way lashes lower for a beat before rising again, the direction the gaze travels when it breaks. No one ever has to explain what passed between them because the look did the work. In a movie overflowing with dialogue, these silent exchanges feel like secrets shared in plain sight, proof that people can communicate volumes without opening their mouths. They remind you how much is understood before anything is said, how much is decided in the space between one blink and the next. The decision to keep breathing, to inhale after a moment that should have stopped everything, becomes its own understated miracle. Characters wake up after nights that should have ended them, sit up in beds with bruises blooming across skin, light another cigarette with hands that still tremble slightly. That first breath isn't triumphant. It's mechanical, almost surprised, as if the body is reminding the mind that it's still here. Tarantino doesn't linger on these recoveries with heroic music or slow motion. They happen plainly. Someone swings legs over the side of a bed, rubs sleep from eyes, stands because standing is what comes next. The film treats survival as the most basic, stubborn act, not a grand achievement. Yet there's dignity in it, in the refusal to let one bad night be the last one. Those quiet mornings after carry a fragile hope. The world didn't finish you, so maybe there's still room to try something different today. The movie also carries this gentle thread that even people who have seen too much can still be caught off guard by tenderness. A hand offered without expectation, a door left unlocked when it should have been bolted, a simple, "You okay?" asked in a voice that means it. These gestures aren't planned, they arrive unbidden, like slipping past defenses because the giver was too tired or too shaken to keep them locked away. When they land, the recipient often freezes, unsure what to do with something that costs nothing yet feels priceless. Tarantino shoots these exchanges with the lightest touch. No close-ups forcing emotion, just enough frame to catch the surprise in a face, the slight softening of shoulders. Tenderness here isn't soft focus romance. It's raw, awkward, sometimes regretted 5 minutes later. But it exists, stubborn and real, proving that even the most calloused hearts still have places that can be touched if someone dares to reach. The rhythm of the film itself starts to feel like breathing by the end. Inhale tension, exhale release, inhale possibility, exhale acceptance. Scenes build pressure, then let it dissipate in small, human ways. A joke that breaks the spell, a song that changes the mood, a decision to walk instead of run. That ebb and flow keeps you steady even when the story spins. You leave not with answers, but with a certain calm acceptance that life keeps its own tempo. And sometimes the best you can do is match it step for step. So we keep sitting side by side in this endless diner booth, watching the same people live the same impossible night and still find slivers of grace inside it. Pulp Fiction doesn't demand you solve its riddles. It just asks you to stay awake with it a little longer, to notice how a single breath can carry you through, how a glance can rewrite everything without changing a thing. Whenever the hours stretch too thin or the quiet gets too heavy, come back. The lights still hum overhead, the coffee still pours. The night still holds its secrets close. Let's keep this long, unhurried drift through Pulp Fiction moving forward because the film has this rare talent for feeling both ancient and brand new every single time you return to it. Like a song you know by heart that still manages to surprise you on the next chorus. We're easing now into how the movie turns the weight of a promise into something almost physical.